But why don't we just kick things off with a little introduction? So if you are not an official panelist, we can see you. Apparently up to like 20 people can be scrolled through here. So that's the setting we're on right now. I'm trying to get it focused on panelists, but I'm waiting for tech people to get back to me. So if you're not an official panelist, please just make sure you're muted until we get to later and we have our panelists. I can't choose who I see, so hopefully they're all here. So why don't you go ahead and if you're a panelist, I can see Ramon, so why don't we start with you?
Sure.
Give a little introduction, and then we will go through the others as well.
Awesome, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks everyone for having me here. My name is Ramon Rodriguez. I am actually I've been a member of Dignity USA since 2002. I just realized that, oh my God, it's like 19 years. And a little bit of my experience at Dignity, I've been, most of the time I've been a part of the Dignity Chicago chapter, where I served as president and for 3 different terms and different points in time, which is fantastic. I was also a member of the Dignity USA board for a couple of terms. And yeah, just very excited to be here. I'm currently living in the San Francisco Bay Area, over in the South Bay, and missing all of you, and hoping we can get a chance to connect live sometime soon. I mean, I think it was interesting. Obviously, I think definitely Brian's presentation was just so spot on to what we're talking about in this panel, right? Which is about the intersectionality, how really we need to really look at these things holistically, right? I mean, all these issues, and how we really need to be honest with ourselves. What's really as the core of our, of our hopes and our struggles. It's really all around really dismantling a lot of these constructs that have been holding us back as a people, and separate us and prevent us from really showcasing the tapestry that we have as people of God. And I think that was, to me, one of the key takeaways. Just obviously the way that he articulated everything was so eloquent yet so simple and so relatable, that to me was just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he doesn't mince words.
Yeah,
it was really wonderful.
Yep.
I see Marta got her video working, so that's great.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry, it took me a while.
That's
to
okay.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we've still got 2 other panelists. All the workshops are having issues right now. But since we've got you, Marta, why don't you introduce yourself? And we've got Marta and Ramon are 2 of our official panelists, so we can start with some of the questions and then go into a wider group discussion. The session is being recorded, so if you're not comfortable being on a recorded call that will be on YouTube, they're going to cut off some of that while we were dealing with the tech. But from here forward, you can turn off your video and sort of go incognito. But we will be recording this conversation that we have with Marta, Ramon, Patrick, and Tom. So Marta, why don't you give us a little introduction for yourself and where you're coming from?
Sure. Okay, my name is Marta Colomer. I am a member of Dignity New York. I live in Queens, Forest Hill, Queens, New York. I guess I'm a special education teacher and a bilingual education teacher also. I guess, I have been in New York for quite a while already. I came to New York when I was 17 years old. Before that, I was in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. So I have been getting the Dignity emails for years, but I guess it was during the pandemic that I saw, when I received the newsletter, that I saw that they were having online liturgies. So I joined, and ever since that time, I have been trying to stay very active with Dignity New York. I guess I read on the liturgies every month. I'm also a member of the Dignity New York diversity group. It was a group that was formed pretty recently, and I guess we're going through a lot of talks and discussions about how we can, how can we can bring all groups of people into the liturgies, and what kind of activities we have to do to bring people together.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I'm just gonna check. I can't see their video, but Patrick or Tom, our other panelists, are you guys here on audio? Give me a shout. Okay. So I think we'll just keep going. They're working with we have our tech team. If anyone else is having issues, it's support@DignityUSA.org. So you can email them and they'll help you get in. But since we've got two of our panelists, I was reflecting on what Brian was saying about the welcome he felt at the Honolulu chapter versus other experiences he's had. And I thought maybe we could just start off framing it by what is a experience, dignity or otherwise, in your life where a community really felt welcoming to you, and maybe what we can learn from that as dignity communities.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in here. For me, I think it's a cliche, but I think every time I've visited a Dignity chapter, I feel very welcome. Generally, I mean, I think the fact that we are very intentional usually about how do we bring people, from the outside, how we communicate our mission. I still remember my first Dignity liturgy that I attended 19 years ago, and just the feeling of relief that I felt, not only for the mission but also just the sense of community that I was surrounded by. And I think more recently, I had an opportunity to attend one of the Zoom liturgies from Dignity Chicago while here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and even being able to just do that, being able to connect remotely and still feel that sense of family. I think that that is, I think, the key element, and just that unconditional acceptance. So those are probably the ones that stand out to me.
Good to hear. Marta, do you have anything?
I felt very welcomed right from the beginning. Like I said, when I started coming to Dignity, it was online. It was during the pandemic, and I also, I felt very welcome right there. Like people, everybody wanted to know who I was, and where I was from. And not very long before that, they were inviting me to read in the liturgies, and right away they asked me, okay, would you be interested in being part of the diversity team for Dignity? And at that time, it's not too long ago, but at that time I didn't really knew much about Dignity, so I said, okay, I would love to be part of it. I'm not sure exactly what I can do now, because since I don't know that much of Dignity, I need to learn a little bit more. But even though, just mentioning to them, okay, I'm going to be away because I have to take care of my elderly parents, and all of a sudden they were like, okay, so we will pray for your parents in the liturgies, we will mention them. So it really felt to me like a family. Like a family. I have had this, I guess, this love and hate relationship with the Catholic Church, even though I grew up a Catholic, and I grew up actually in Catholic schools. And I feel that I never felt so comfortable, like except that when I decided to be part of Dignity. So I guess it's something that I want to do, and that I want to continue doing.
That personal invitation is so powerful sometimes. Good Could you tell us a little bit more? You said your chapter has like a diversity team. How does that work?
Okay, well, you know what? When we started doing the when we were doing the online liturgies, every now once in a while they used to put, they used to include like songs from different cultures, and I remember there was a song that they included in Spanish. And I remember I was writing in the chat, oh, I'm glad to see the Spanish language, represented in the liturgy. Then another member from Dignity New York, he wrote right on the chat there, and he said, well, we're planning to start a diversity group in Dignity. We're trying to bring more people of different groups, different cultures. And would you like to be would you like to be part of it? Would you be interested? And I said, sure. So that's how it really started. Yeah. We're doing a lot of discussions. We're talking about how to do it, because it's not only for people of color, but we want to include everyone. So we're trying to do we're trying to think how we can do that. Now we have Hispanic Heritage Month coming now, and then we have San Lorenzo Ruiz. That's a saint from the Philippines, also, that we want to include in the liturgies. In November, we have our Lady of Providence from Puerto Rico. That's the patron saint from Puerto Rico. There's so much to represent. We have the posadas from the Mexican posadas in December. We're trying, because there is a lot that we have to do. So we're really doing like dialogues about how we can do all of this, and how we can announce it, so that we can bring more people into the New York chapter. But when we had when we have our online liturgies, I mean, now they are in person, but then at the same time, they have them online, so that people that cannot be present, they can be present through online. We get people joining us from everywhere. We have people joining us from Brazil, joining us from different parts of the United States. We have people joining us from Ireland, England. So, we're trying to be able to represent everybody. Yeah.
That's awesome. So just an update. We're still working with Hopin to get the issue figured out. But in the meantime, it looks like this is going to be more of a traditional Zoom call with all of us on screen. So if anyone feels like turning their camera on, you can do that. But also keep your microphone muted. And if you have questions for our panelists or for each other, if we open it up, you can put those in the Q&A tab to the right. Okay. Ramona, does your chapter do anything special to like talk about diversity, or to make sure that everybody feels welcome? Like,
yeah, I mean,
Martha was talking about.
Yeah, totally. I think again, most of my experience has been with Dignity Chicago. Over the course of the years, we've done many things to really bring bring a more sense of diversity, and being able to really serve the greater community. So the way that we look at it is, it's less about us trying to, one thing we don't want to do is just kind of do virtue signaling about this, right? So I think one of the things that we always approach is making sure that we start with what are the needs of the community, what are potentially gaps and ways that we can help. And sometimes that gets reflected in the liturgy that we do, in terms of being able to break feasts and make sure that that is fully representative, in terms of the people who are at the altar, as well as in the pews, the type of liturgy itself, the songs. But I think, one of the things that I think has been very powerful over the years is also really reaching out to organizations in the community to just really kind of understand and learn what are the needs there, what are the hot issues that where we can perhaps lend a voice. Working, for example, with organizations around economic empowerment, for example, in the Hispanic community, is something that we've looked at in the past. And I think as we also look at just understanding, holistically, what are the different needs that we have in terms of looking at, perhaps the non-binary community. How we look at how we get involved in maybe political and advocacy causes. We always try to look at it from the angle of we want to make sure that it's representative with our values of dignity, of course, and we start with that lens, with that filter. But then we also try to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of compartmentalizing these issues either. And I think one of the things that I've seen over the years that has worked out really well is the more that we think about diversity as a core issue for the chapter as opposed to a side project, the more effective we can be. The more we can, the more that we try to ingrain a different perspective, make sure that our leadership in the board also, that we try harder to look for different perspectives. I think that is ultimately, I think what in the long run has helped us, in adapt and in many cases thrive as these things have changed.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I feel like the keynote we just heard, he made a good case for why it's not a side issue. It's the central issue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really great.
I know.
Go ahead.
I know that in Dignity New York, we're also trying to diversify. We're really trying to have like a more diverse leadership also, or try to bring more diverse members to the board. Also, I know that I was just invited to the they have like the liturgy meetings like every month. So me as part of the diversity team, I was just invited to be part also of the liturgy meetings, so that we can so that I can give my perspective on it. And we're really trying to have, like, I guess, different groups represented also in the liturgy committee. We had also, I think at the beginning of the summer we had a social event. We tried to be very careful with the pandemic that is going on. We had it, I guess, now that we had good weather, we had it in a park in New York, by the water in New York City. So we're also looking to find ways in which we can meet personally, taking into consideration all the protocols, of the pandemic. So we're trying to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that the pandemic has done is has perhaps forced us to be a lot more resourceful, right, in how we meet, right, and how we connect with each other. But it has also, in some ways, opened some opportunities. So one of the challenges, for example, that that we have, and I think Brian started alluding to this, is where we gather, right, and where the choices that we make may inadvertently exclude certain people, right? And I think now, as we have had to work more virtually, that I think is an invitation for all of our, for everybody in Dignity to really kind of think hard as to how can we more easily meet people where they're at. And that's, I think, because always usually the struggle is like when you think about always having that in-person liturgy or that in-person meeting, and you want to maybe reach out to a different community that may be used to different meeting in different locations, or may not necessarily feel welcome making the trek to a predominantly white, wealthy neighborhood. it does open those opportunities to really try different approaches and potentially attract people that otherwise would have been really dissuaded. And I think that's something that to balance as we look into the future.
We also have to take into consideration, there are people that are homebound also. So that's why, like right now, I'm not sure if all the Dignity chapters are doing this around the United States, but when we have our liturgies, we have it in person in New York City, but also we have it online. So they can be seen from everywhere. If you need to see them online, and then the people that are online at the end of the liturgy or at the beginning, they have there is some time for conversation and for sharing. It's not just looking at the liturgy, participate, and that's it. We try to we try for everybody to know each other. Sometimes at the end of the liturgy, we break when we do it online, as in the online part, they break it into groups, small groups, and people talk like for 15 minutes, and about whatever they want. So it's a way of getting to know everybody, even the ones that don't live in, don't live in New York or cannot be presently in where we meet, in New York City.
That's great. Anybody who wants to can share questions in the Q&A. And since we are sort of in this different format, I'm just going to twist things up a little bit.
Right. Embrace it.
I love hearing about what these two have done in their chapters. So if anyone else wants to share just briefly, if there's good things that are working in your chapter, or even things that went poorly that you learned from, this is a good space for us all to learn what our local communities are doing. And I know I'm not in an actual Dignity chapter, but I have my own local faith community, so that's fine too. Doesn't have to be official Dignity. So go ahead and share if you'd like. You're going to have to unmute yourself for us to hear you.
I think Ramon very, very nicely described a lot of the things that we have tried at Dignity Chicago over the years. I think part of our challenge is...
This is Chris from San Antonio.
Oh, we might have a lag. Hang on. Sorry. See, this is why I was supposed to do a panel.
Okay.
Okay. So,
all right. I think we trying to get it to sustainability is challenging.
Shall I go ahead or shall I hold off?
Let's let Martin finish, and then
okay.
Chris will talk to you. Yeah. Okay. Martin, go ahead.
Cool. Thanks. So I think that's been challenging. We're really small community, so human resources are limited. So we have to really make extra effort to continue to do the work. And I think I love the idea of the diversity panel, or at least that making sure that that's a strong focus in everything that we do. What are we doing and where are we gathering? I love that part of Brian's talk about really paying attention to where we're doing our any social events. And we're trying to actually reach out further around the metro area, so that folks are not always having to travel to the north side to the Lakeview community when we're in person, but where else might we be able to go that's actually going to be more accessible for many other people.
That's great. Great. And okay, so I'm going to call on Chris next, who had talked a minute ago, but I also see Logan has explained in the chat that if you're not a panelist and you aren't sharing your video, you can unshare that video. So if you are tech savvy enough to figure out how to click on the right hand corner and unshare your video, it will allow us to get different people up here and hopefully the panelists up here. Okay. So Chris, who had started speaking before, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I was just going to share that I've been a member of Dignity San Antonio for a little over 20 years. And of course, Nikki Valdez was the heart and soul and conscience of our community in many ways. And she passed away in December. But I think a couple things that we've tried to do, and I would say that we somewhat reflect the nature of San Antonio. San Antonio is about 60% Latino, and that's close to what our community is. And I'm an Anglo, and we've had some African Americans come through the community from time to time, but not many. But two things we've always tried to do is first of all, we do welcome everyone. That's one thing that Nikki was always very conscious of that. And but every year we participate in Gay Pride, which gets us out into the community. And then we have a service that we run in October around National Coming Out Day called Solidarity Sunday, which is an interfaith service designed to stand against and pray against violence in all its forms, but especially LGBTQ violence. So those are a couple things we do. Those are more in the nature of outreach than liturgy per se. But I think one of the things that we struggle with is as we age, I think we become kind of comfortable within ourselves and the way we do things. And it's change is not easy. We would love to have some younger people come into the community and provide fresh ideas, and we're not sure quite how to do that. I think a lot of communities struggle with that, but I think perhaps in our aging, we become more comfortable and less willing to make changes and less willing to outreach into the community and interact with other people intersectionally.
Yeah.
We're just more comfortable staying within ourselves. So anyway, that's just something I want to share.
Yeah, and I think that has been a discussion that comes up often in Dignity, whether it's talking about women or young people or people of color, people with disabilities, that just being aware that to truly welcome people will change our communities. And are we willing to have change in the way we do things, not just have them follow our rituals and ways of doing things. So it's a good awareness, whether or not we know how to deal with it. And I think that also leads to, somebody had put in the chat here for Ramon, but I think Marta can also answer. What are some specific examples, like when you say you reach out to the community and expand your reach, what is your chapter doing, or what could other communities do?
Actually, well, you know what? Actually, we're really talking about that right now, because I remember that I went through, I guess I was looking in Facebook about ways that I could make people aware of Dignity New York, and having people, trying to invite people to join the liturgies. But I remember that I went into an LGBTQI group in Facebook, and they said to me, "Oh, you know what? Thank you for reaching out to us, but we're just a social type of group, so we really don't announce anything. It has to be religious, or so I couldn't do it like that. I know that we cannot, I guess, go to the church, the Catholic Church, and say, okay, we have give flyers, or tell them we have a LGBTQ group, and we would love for you to join. So, I wish we could do that. But we're trying to see what other ways we can invite people or make people aware of Dignity New York. We're trying to do it mostly through the internet, through Facebook, trying to look at other Facebook groups. I know that there's some groups about gay Catholics in Facebook. There are groups of I don't know, faith, faith groups, not exactly, not only Catholic, but we're trying to, we're doing research on that. And also we advertise our chapter through, I guess, the gay centers in New York gay centers. But I feel that we have to do a lot of work on that. We really have to find ways, other ways on other avenues, how to do it. I don't know if anyone else, I don't know if Ramon, if in your, if in your chapter they do it in any sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, plus one. It's interesting because many of the things that you've said is we've experimented to different levels, and I think my take on many of these things is like, just because you tried it once and it didn't work out doesn't mean that you necessarily give up, but maybe perhaps try in a different way. I think, for example, back when we were able to meet in person, we would do things like meetups, and we would actually create our own meetup groups around LGBT Catholics, and we would be very transparent, right, that this was sponsored by Dignity Chicago, so that it wouldn't be a surprise. But we would go and do things that were non-liturgical in nature. We would go and do talks for people to share their stories, whether it was for coming out or in, events from Valentine's, and we wanted to make sure that as we did that it was done in an environment that was fairly neutral and fairly easy for people to arrive. I think specifically when you're talking about certain, you want to be very intentional about certain groups in those situations. We would try to partner with folks. So I think, for example, I don't know if this is many years ago, so I don't know if this organization still exists, but we would actually work with a group called Amigas Latinas over in the Chicago community that had really strong roots with obviously Latina lesbians, and it was a great way to do things together. We would also work with the equivalent organization with men. We would also sometimes, just through some other organizations that are not necessarily geared toward that community, but have those connections. So we've worked with Lambda Legal, the local chapter, and they've sometimes introduced us to people who happen to be fit that intersectionality profile, and so we would also look for those opportunities and try to make sure that those leads, whenever we could find them, we would actually go ahead and serve. But I think that the key is to look at it from a service mentality. So at the end of the day, we exist because we want to make sure that we bring hope to the community, that we are serving and living the gospel, and in doing so, potentially also bringing, we would bring people to maybe our liturgies, but we're not also measuring success necessarily by how many people we bring into the liturgy, but how many people get engaged into our community, and how our mission and our message really gets spread out. So I think that's also another thing to keep in mind, is also reframe, what is it that we're trying to accomplish and what our goals are, so that we are really gonna be truly be acting on something that's gonna be important for where we work. I don't know if that was specific enough. But.
No, I love that. And I noticed you both talked about going out to sort of spaces that were a little bit less obviously Catholic or less obviously religious, but where you might find someone who happens to be Catholic or even former Catholic who would benefit. So I love that. There's also been some questions like with Brian's speech also of just the social justice aspect of this anti-racism work, and it's one and the same, but also different to be talking about this existential threat of white supremacy and what our communities can do with that. So, this is a space we've just been challenged by him. I hope that we can be challenged by each other to be honest about maybe what Dignity isn't doing or what we're being silent on, what your own chapters are or aren't doing. How are we putting this in a larger context of our lived intersectional lives?
If I may jump in on that one, it was interesting as he was talking about that. I think probably the first step is like realizing our own biases and our own whether we, subconsciously maybe even part of the problem sometimes, right? I mean, like we sometimes behave in ways that maybe perpetuate, this injustices and inequity, or we might be potentially buying into our own privilege, right? And I think is how do we really re-examine that, and how do we come from a place of humility? I feel that that's almost like the first thing to do, and within our community, first personally, but then within our communities, how do we have that dialogue into ways that maybe we have in the past made decisions that have excluded or potentially even turned people away in ways that we didn't realize that. And like I think that the example that he provided, I go back to the place of where people gather, and whether that sends a signal that, hey, this is for a specific group of people that meet a certain criteria and not others, and whether we other people without even realizing it.
That's why I feel, that I guess in the New York chapter that I guess there is more. I guess there is more awareness. They have to, I guess they have come.
This is Chris again.
Oh, Chris, can you hang on? I think your audio is delayed and it's talking over top of Marta. So I will call on you right when she stops. I'm sure it's just because your audio is delayed. I know you don't mean to do it. Go ahead, Marta.
I just muted him.
Okay. It's okay. It's okay. No, I'm saying that I guess in my chapter in New York, I guess they have come to the conclusion. We have come to the conclusion that there are things that have to be changed. There are more people that they have to reach, and I guess they have this sense of okay, we have to do something. We cannot stay with the same people. We cannot just serve one side of like just one group of people. So I think as long as there is the awareness and the I guess the wish of bringing more people, I guess something will be done. Maybe maybe we will fail sometimes, about things, trying planning things that we can do. Maybe we'll fail, but I guess we can learn from all of that, right? And then the next time that we try, I guess we can come up with different ideas. So, but I think right now, I guess in our chapter, there is the awareness that, that okay, we have to change things. We have to represent more, different groups of people, different people. So I guess as long as we, we want to do that, we'll find a way, even if it's not, even if it cannot be like a change that we can just do like really fast, something that we can do fast and say, okay, so from now on, next week, we'll have more people. But it's something that, I guess there is a lot of like trial and error in it, I guess.
Yeah. And I got to do a little plug, since Patrick was supposed to be on our panel, and I think it's a real shame that these issues are keeping him off of it. But I know that in addition to all the other great things he'd be saying, he'd be making a plug for our anti-racism groups that we have at the national level, because exactly with this trial and error and talking about it in a greater context, we have a People of Color Caucus to be an identity group, just like we have a women's group or a young adult group. And I'm not on that group, so I can't quite say what they talk about, but that's sort of a support space there, and also an activist space. And then we also have a working group that anyone can join, where we can share the ideas like we're doing in this panel. And I know there's been discussion there too about it being like an activist issue, a larger context issue or political issue, joining things, which I think is hopefully a good move for Dignity, since that silence has sometimes existed and sometimes hurt people. So yeah, it's good to hear that your chapters are working on things too. And Chris, did you still want to make a comment? We can take you off mute.
Sure. Just to comment on, you asked about challenges earlier, Alan, and I think one of the things that challenged me in Father Brian's speech was this idea. I related to it as an Anglo male. When I first realized I was gay, there was a sense that I had, I was a law student. I was going to be a lawyer, and I was Catholic, and I had done all the things right that I thought, I was very conscientious Catholic. So I felt like I'd done everything right in my life. And then when I realized I was gay, it kind of threw that all into a tailspin, because, and my reaction was, I'm not going to let this quote ruin my life, and this is, of course, this is almost 40 years ago now, but I wanted to hold on to what I had in terms of privilege. I think that was the way he said it. There's a tendency to want to hold on to what you have, and that sort of is the tension between wanting to assimilate versus wanting to implode and reconstruct, I guess, so I think that's a challenge for me personally, and maybe for some others too, and maybe for some of our communities as well. And I don't know what the right answer is there. I personally feel like there's probably a balance to be struck there, but I'd be interested in others if they have any comments or thoughts on that.
I mean, I think what Brian said was very interesting is using that analogy of Love Victor versus Love Simon, and how the process was definitely much more torturous for for Victor because of the experience of being in a Latinx household, is especially a working class Latinx household. And what that means in terms of how they deal with faith is different. To me, I think another thing that brings to life is this whole notion of like the economic disparity and how that affects the way that that we may potentially, in some ways, subconsciously bring it, exclude other people. And again, here's some of the choices that we, for example, could be making that send the wrong signal, and when we go about perhaps focusing in what type of financial contributions people can make to the organization, or maybe the way that the activities that we do that may require a certain financial outlet, or the way that maybe we interact in ways and the type of activities that may potentially require someone to make some type of investment that they wouldn't necessarily be ready to make. So I think sometimes having that sensitivity that there is an economic disparity that we also need, that is also strongly tied, and that the reality is it affects especially communities of color a lot more heavily, and especially with the pandemic now, it's also been more heavily impacted. So I think we just need to all these issues that cannot be treated separately. You have to realize that they're all interconnected, and as we are looking for ways to serve the different communities better, that we also take into account the realities that they're living in, and that how do we meet those people where they are, and do it in a way that is relatable to them, because ultimately they are going to be us, and that's going to be the future of our community.
I remember this is years ago. I guess in the 90s, I heard that, when the AIDS, the AIDS issue was very big, and there were not so much treatment for AIDS or anything. I remember reading and also hearing that there were many Hispanics that they didn't seek help because there was a language barrier there, and and because of the issues that were going on, that they were going through in terms of family, economics, and all of that, they didn't feel deserving of getting that help. And I look at this now with Dignity in the same way. It's like, like you said, Ramon, we have to meet people where they are, and maybe just interact with them, in the way that they can, in the way with help them with what they need, I guess. Also, it's like not everybody can do the same thing. They cannot offer the same thing. So I guess we have to have that into consideration when we when we do outreach for Dignity also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond outreach, I think, and I'm coming at it as a white woman, but as, a woman and a younger woman are both sort of smaller communities within Dignity as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think about the parallels of, even if we outreach and someone comes once, what makes them stay?
Mm-hmm.
Do they see themselves there? Do they, and both of you described, some of why you stayed. But I can't help but think how many people I see once
Mm-hmm.
who I don't see again. And I think that's a real area where we could do better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just want to put that out there as part of our outreach conversation, I guess.
It's really about engagement, not just about outreach, right? It's like, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
get them in the door, or you get them to come once. How do you keep them committed and engaged? And again, it's also, how do they want to engage? I think, Marta, you hit it right on the nail, like, or on the head. It's like, we maybe the way that we approach engaging Dignity and what we need as a faith community may be very different than than a young lesbian may want. I mean, I think that there's a generational differences, but also there is also just the notion of the realities of what we're living in this stage in life. And so I think we just need to, it's as much as outreach, is also out learning and then experimenting, and then just being adaptable, and understanding what, how our mission, the way it's interpreted and the way that it is brought to life may look very different than the way we may have done it in the past.
Mm-hmm. And there's some conversation happening over here in the chat about this being part of like a cultural change. And it looks like from the chat, people are talking about the wider US culture, the wider world culture, but also I would think the culture of Dignity, if we're going to engage people and keep them there, and allow them to change us. Right? Or allow us to change us, as Brian said.
And I also feel that, and I guess as a teacher, this is always, this always in me that, people have different things to offer. Everybody has something different to offer. Like, as a teacher that I am, they talk now, we have to keep in mind about the different intelligences, right? Mm-hmm. So for someone, maybe someone, I guess I have a child that cannot do this, but he's able to do something else. And he's, some, people are like, there's some of them are, like they can do some, they're very good at doing things with their hands, or they're very good to, there are different abilities that people have. So that's, we have to keep that into consideration, that whoever comes and whoever comes to us has something that they can offer, that can be different, that we can use.
So we have maybe 5 minutes left so that we can have a little bit of break to check out the chapel and the expo area before heading back to the stage. I want to acknowledge that as much as we can make an excuse for technology, it is harmful to have things not go well, especially in a racial justice panel. So I apologize so much to the people who weren't able to speak. It really breaks my heart that hopefully they I mean, everybody knows it's a technology issue, but it doesn't make it feel less hurtful to be silenced. So I am so sorry that that happened. I hope that anyone who wants to join the Anti-Racism Resource Group or the People of Color Caucus will do that. And I just thank everybody who was willing to join our panel, and also Ramon and Marta for rolling with it when it got cut in half. So, and also it's a little hard to tell with the cameras, but we had almost 40 people here at the beginning who could hear and see us, which was part of what was making the technology hard. So this is definitely a popular topic that Dignity is going to keep working on and keep moving, hopefully in the right direction, locally, nationally, all of it. So thank you so much for hanging in with me and for sharing your wisdom. Ramona, Marta, do you want to say any last comments?
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead, Marta? Or...
No, I'm just saying that, please, I'm just saying that, with what I said before, whatever you have, whatever you bring, there is always something that you can offer, so something that you can share. So, and it might not be the same thing that the other person has to offer, has to share. So, I guess, we have to keep in mind that we really need to help bring dignity to the future. We have to help, we have to find ways, and we have to help about, trying to welcome the different groups of people, and I guess, dignity offers something that people need. I got a lot of like comfort during the pandemic from dignity, from being able to to attend the liturgies, and from being able to pray together. So people are spiritual, and I guess we have something to offer there.
Yeah, I definitely +1 everything that Marta said. I want to also just encourage everyone to think about just the times that we're living through as an opportunity to reset what we can offer our communities, how we want to envision dignity. I think if there's one thing that I found really there were many things that I found really inspiring from Brian's talk, but one line that particularly stuck in with me was around let's not limit our imagination. Let's go ahead and use it as an opportunity to imagine what we can offer, but also what dignity could look like, what the impact that dignity can have in terms of changing people's lives, and really what success looks like. It may not necessarily look at the same way it looked 40 years ago, but that's part of the beauty, I think, that but part of the sign of being a vital organization is that we can reinvent ourselves, and that we can keep ourselves relevant through these times. So I just thank everybody here for doing that, and for just not shying away from that challenge.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And everyone, just remember, we do have some closing stuff back at the stage area, a little bit more from the organizers. And then tomorrow is some liturgy and prayer and things like that. So don't forget to come back to the stage area now and also tomorrow. And I will see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.